everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis and Nate back doing some dad chat, and for the first time in a long time, Nate and I are actually looking at one another. It's been a long time since we used to do this, and then like 4 years ago we stopped for some reason, stopped looking at each other, and now we can see one another again. It's nice. It's healthy. I don't think I've actually looked at you since we got together in Terre Haute.
I was going to say since we hung out in person, and you're sort of like, well, I took a look at you once, and now I'm good.
That's it.
Yeah. So we actually have a webcam that we use because Trash Future uses the studio. I mean, this is the primary user of the studio, and they do the YouTube stream. So Alice is the host, and she does it in Glasgow, but they dial in on the webcam, and then obviously you've got the situation where you got to make it at least plausibly okay. Like we're not like a professional streamer setup, but like you need a webcam. So we've got this one. Because it's just the two of us. No disrespect, but it was easier to have the camera on when Adrian was a co-host, because then if there's three people, like the jumping in and fucking talking over, like I know this from other shows that I edit, it's impossible. So we needed it.
You got to be able to see each other a little bit so that you can, a conversation needs to be kind of like that. It needs to be face to face. So Nate, I wanted to talk because, and I know we've discussed this kind of in the past a little bit, but my wife and I are not musically inclined people. So, and we ended up a while ago, we got a keyboard from the secondhand store, a really nice one. And I'm trying to use my 40s to be a little bit more artistic. I'm doing more painting. I'm doing more design work on my own, and I think I kind of want to move into music as well. So I was kind of wondering, and I want to with our daughter too, because she, we have this, as I said, we homeschool. So we have a thing called Prodigy, where it's teaching her on like xylophones and everything. It's got individual xylophones in each key and everything. But like I don't know, like piano wise, I feel like the piano is going to be, I don't want to say the easiest thing, but probably the most accessible thing. One, because we have one, and two, because there's not really a lot of, there's not a whole lot of, I guess, with a violin, you have to tune it, you have to rosin the bow, you have to, there's all kinds of work that you have to do to make sure the instrument itself works. And I feel like the piano is going to be a little bit easier. So because you learned the piano kind of, not necessarily on your own, but like you decided I want to learn music, so you want that direction. I was kind of wondering like how you did it. How did you start with the piano, and how did you get up to where you are now?
Well, I should emphasize that recently I did a kind of exploratory foray into using this software called Piano Marvel, which is sight reading training. And now I'm a much better player than I am a sight reader. But I was gauged at like phase 2 of beginner, basically, in terms of my sight reading. I haven't sight read, in practice in a very long time. When I was doing lessons, I'm going to start lessons again soon. But when I was doing them during COVID, like I did practice sight reading a little more, but it's definitely a weak point, and it's something I need to improve. How did I start piano? So my parents, put it this way, I probably would have played music more consistently throughout my life if I had been able to play the instruments I wanted to play, but my parents basically said, no, the only instrument you can play is piano, and you can master the piano, and then you can play any other instrument you want. Now, there's no way they could define what mastering the piano was. It was basically just saying, fuck off, we don't want we don't want to hear you playing guitar, which is what I wanted to learn. So I took lessons from when I was until I was about probably 10 or 11.
All right, so you've already got kind of a foundation, because all I had was I did Glee Club.
Yeah,
so
but I got to be real with you, dude. When I think back on what I learned as a piano player as a small child, that's why I can at least, when you give me like in the key of C major a sight reading thing with individual things of like, starting from middle C and then go, I can read that. I remember that. But in terms of, I did it as a little kid because you're kind of told to, and I didn't really enjoy it. There were a few songs here and there that I did like, and I loved to play them and loved to practice them. And you'd think that would have fucking rung some bells as to like, oh, well, maybe but no, it was fucking, all of the kind of classical training pieces that you have to learn. And so I kind of fought it. I didn't want to practice. I had to be made to practice, under duress. I hated it. And I didn't want to play piano ever. I just didn't care. So when I was 13, when I was probably 12, I realized our student band room in my middle school had a bunch of instruments that they had that they never used, and they let you could borrow them, you could sign them out. So they let me sign out a bass guitar for 2 weeks. So I literally carried it home because I if I remember correctly, by the time I was done getting it checked out after school, there wasn't a bus. Like the bus had already left. And there wasn't like a later activities bus that day. So I walked like 2.5 miles home with a hard shell case with a bass guitar in it, like stopping to take breaks. You know, I'm like 12. I'm like 4'11" or something. And I brought that back home, and I think my brother had an amp, or we had something you could plug into. I can't remember what. And so I really liked it. And like, I was listening by ear to songs that I liked on the radio, like Good by Better Than Ezra, Longview by Green Day, and just started playing it by ear. It took me a while. Longview took a little longer, but I figured it out by ear. And I don't know if it was one of those rare flashes of kind of getting the fucking point, but somewhere down the line, my mom was like, oh, he does like actually playing music, and like he's literally playing this instrument off the radio.
And on his own.
On his own, no one told me to. And so she asked me, do you want to learn how to play bass? And I said, yes. So when I was 13, they got me a bass guitar as my birthday present, and I started taking lessons. And I took lessons up through probably the end of 8th grade. So from basically the summer between 6th and 7th grade up through the end of 8th grade. When I started doing high school sports, I had less time. And then a little bit during high school, I wanted to learn how to play the regular guitar. So I had stopped bass lessons, but I went to the same like music store that had teachers and learned a little. I mean, I would say give me a couple of months of regular practice and I'm a pretty decent rhythm guitarist. Like I know how to play guitar. I know the concept of playing guitar, but I am emphatically not a guitarist. I'll put it that way. But I know how to play like bar chords, drop D chords, open chords, stuff like that. I can do the basics, but it's not an instrument I play on a regular basis. So, but I listened to music and the songs I wanted to play based on the stuff that I liked. I've basically been like an obsessive music listener my whole life. Whereas when I was 8, I was just listening to Queen's greatest hits over and over again, and then I got older, a little more diversified.
As I said, the only musical stuff that I did was Glee Club, which taught me, because our daughter's an Irish dance, so and it's hard to like. She's a very literal child, So like when somebody says, "Oh, you gotta," she learns the music, she learns the dance steps, and she learns how to memorize them because like here's the steps and I can do them to the beat. But when you say something like, well, you've got to like kind of feel the music in your body or feel it in your heart, that's just like a full brick wall. Like, what the fuck do you mean listen to it in your heart? It kind of like for my wife and I, it takes us back to like when we were still going to mass and somebody was like, oh, you have to feel, Jesus in your heart. And like, I don't feel anything in my heart. My heart is not a thing that feels, it's a thing that pumps blood around my body. I'm confused as to what this kind of means. So like, we're trying to instill like the concept of like really feeling music to her. And she listens to music. We have Kids Place Live. So she listens to a lot of kids music, but also they play a whole lot of, the music that dads love to hear, stuff from the 80s and Queen and working at the car wash and stuff like that. They're always rotating stuff like that in as well. So that does exist for her, but I don't know. We're trying to get her to understand that like music is a rhythmic thing. She doesn't dance, I guess, is the biggest thing. So like that's one of the hurdles that we're trying to come across. And like I said, I never learned how to play anything. I had a piano when we were growing up.
Well, it feels like everyone did, like or everyone's grandma did, yeah. But like. I would say, it's funny. It sounds like you're explaining you've got to feel it in your heart, and the response you're getting is basically like if you were trying to explain that to Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Exactly.
I would say, so about the piano, just to kind of like, I'll give you my story with it. Because I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and because of my age, and playing bass guitar, you think about it, I turned 13 in 1997. A great big moment in terms of being a guy who listens to the radio and likes slightly weird music, or kid, really, I mean, small kid, was the Radiohead album OK Computer. Fundamentally, It was just a huge thing, and like in the kind of circles I ran in, like the music we listened to, it was big. And I was, I'm a guy of a certain age, and this like basically you're almost predisposed to be a Radiohead fan, so listening to the Bends, listening to OK Computer, and then listening to Kid A when it came out which I like now, but I bought it the day it came out, and I very clearly remember getting to the end of the album and being like, what the fuck was that? But there's a song on that called Morning Bell, which is played on a Rhodes Mark II electric piano, like a 60s electric piano. And I think it's in 5/4 time. It's in a different time signature, but it's got a very kind of like, I don't know, something connected, like hearing, I'm pretty sure it's Johnny Greenwood playing the piano in that. And then also there's a version of Karma Police they performed in 1997 on The Late Show with David Letterman. It's kind of an alternate arrangement, and Johnny Greenwood plays a Rhodes on that. And it fucking blew my mind when I saw that video. Like, I loved that song already, even, from when it came out, even when I was like, basically not even 13 yet. But seeing that performance and seeing him just like, to my eyes, shredding the piano.
Sure.
It's not that really hard what he's doing, but like, if you can't play, it looks amazing. It's like if your dad speaks broken Spanish, can order food in it, and you don't speak a word of Spanish, you're like, wow, you're fluent.
Well, wait. What is this? What is so special about this piano? Is it like a double decker piano?
No. This is it's an old it's a 60s electric piano, and this is really funny because it uses felt hammers on tines, and it has an amplifier in it. So while it has the same key action, it's a way heavier action than a standard piano because there's less tension in it, but you are actually using a thing of pushing keys, moving a lever that's using a felt hammer to hit something to make a sound. It's just been amplified. So it's got this really, like, I'll send you a link to it. And if you listen to Morning Bell, that's a great example of it. It's got this very distinct tone. Actually, the reason I know this is because I bought one. In 2004, a guy was selling one in Dayton, Ohio for $300 on Craigslist. So I got in my Honda Civic from Bloomington, Indiana, where I was a freshman in college, drove out there, paid him $300, and put this fucking thing, and it was beautiful. And I did not know how to take care of a vintage instrument back then. I eventually... I stored it at my friend's place when I was in Afghanistan thinking it would be better, but in his basement was probably moldier and damper than the fucking storage unit.
Yeah.
And so I wound up selling it in New York because a guy wanted it for basically spare parts because it was complete. Like, the heads out there are losing their minds right now because Rhodes Mark II, full case, full legs, damper pedal, levers, every single thing about it was complete. I squandered it because I'm a big idiot. But I bought that thing, and I was like, one of the reasons I got it was because, like, listening to music, seeing it, being kind of, wow, piano can be amazing. It can be really, really cool. And then, like, another big milestone for guys our age, you can guess what it's going to be. Think about pop radio, guy who plays the piano.
I'm going to say Smashing Pumpkins.
No, because there's not a ton of piano stuff for them. Guy, kind of a nerd, but he makes the piano seem cool. His first name starts with a B. The heads are losing their minds right now. Ben Folds.
Oh God! No, I was never a Ben Folds. I was never a Radiohead. I was too busy listening to Tool like an idiot back then.
I mean, I would say that it's bad. I didn't just listen to this. I listened to a ton of other shit too. Like, believe me, like, I listened to Tool. I listened to fucking A Perfect Circle. I listened to like when we talk about like Cottonmouth Kings and ICP and Korn, and I mean, like, even some real deep cuts like Dial 7. I listened to that too. But my brother left the Ben Folds CD, Whatever Never Amen, in the car, and then he went to college, and when I got my license, I was driving it. The first song on that album is a song called One Angry Dwarf and 200 Solemn Faces. It is, listen, when you hear it, you'll get why, if you were inclined to think the piano is cool, because it fucking shreds. He almost never plays it live because it's so goddamn hard to play, but it's just a really, really cool song, and it's funny. Like, it's genuinely very funny. It's basically the song about this guy who's like, he's a dwarf, but he's grown up to be famous, and he's like, all of the people that tortured him in elementary school want to be friends with him now. He's like, no, fuck you, I haven't forgotten. It's very, very funny.
So it's Skater Boy, but for dwarfs.
Yes, Skater Boy, but for little people. Yeah, it's called Now I'm big and important. One angry dwarf and 200 solemn faces of youth. Yeah, that's it. Or it might be 200 solemn faces of youth. I can't remember. Anyway, I was like, how in the fuck do you play like that? And so I started taking piano lessons again as a senior in high school, and I didn't try enough, but I did try. I did have to do a recital once, and then when I was in college, it turned out my ROTC program was like kind of fucking disorganized because as we've later discovered, the professor of military science was a total pillhead and just out of his fucking shit. And so I had really good grades. I was like, I was always in like the top 3 of people in my class in terms of like my ROTC class in terms of like grade point average. And they were like, as long as you graduate on time, we'll fucking sign whatever, just whatever you need to do. So they signed off on a thing you could do at Indiana University, which was as an undergrad, even if you didn't have musical training, you could sign up for a 1 credit hour class where you just took lessons from a graduate student in music, because they have a huge music school there. I'm sure Indiana is finding a way to, in the name of anti-wokeness, to destroy it, but they've got a very, very, very established, reputable music school there. And so I started taking lessons and did that, I want to say, for 2 or 3 years. And I don't necessarily think I was any good, but it forced me to get better. I had to play one of the compositions in Schumann's Kinderszenen. I had to play Debussy's Arabesque No. 1. Like, that's not high level shit. Like, people who are actual serious piano players will know, okay, that is sort of like you are learning how to play the piano for real, but at a basic level. But for me, it was insane. It was so hard, and I had to practice so much. But my piano teacher said something to me once that kind of haunted me for the rest of my life. She said, this is all I do. I'm a music student. I've been playing music my entire life, and now I'm a graduate student. All I do is study music. She's like, I know better than anyone if someone's practiced or not from how they play. She's like, you have an incredible ear. You have an absolutely incredible ear, and you're kind of cheating playing stuff by ear to get around not practicing. She's like, if you just practiced, you'd be an incredible musician. Now, she was a Japanese woman and was just like, I must have really pissed her off if she had gotten to that point.
Right.
But then I want to say I took a music theory module I could take, same thing, pay for lessons in music theory, and I don't remember anything about it besides the concept of chord inversions. But I, for some reason that stuck with me because I was just a college student, as an idiot, and I didn't pay attention. But that was all kind of hidden there. Like, I had played, when I was doing the thing having to do recitals in college, like I had to go down to like the practice facility and play the piano like every night, like for an hour each night. I will say playing music, it was really helpful for learning how to do stuff where you have to kind of memorize shit for, science class, or in my case, the army, like Pathfinder school. Studying for Pathfinder school, I think, was easy because playing piano, like, okay, when I was a kid, I thought, okay, well, my mom will listen to me play the piece 2 times through, and then that's it, I'm done. Doesn't matter if I make mistakes. And it's like, no, that's not really how you practice a performance like that. You have to play the measure, get it right, play the next measure, get it right, get transition between the two. And if you fuck it up again, and you have to get to the point where you aren't making those mistakes. And weirdly, that worked. That, as like a study method, that actually worked really well for like other things in my life. But
you heard it here, kids. Piano will make you a better soldier.
I'm gonna say that really, this is genuinely true. Some of this is maturity. Some of this is learning style. Some of this is not feeling like a fucking prisoner because, I went to a high school with a closed campus and we were so over surveilled and like over supervised. But I can also say that it's possible that music study and learning how to play piano and learning how to play music and the way that you actually practice, that if you look at before and you look at after in my life, the only reason I didn't fail every single science or math class before was because I charmed my teachers and they liked me enough to just give me a C- to get me the fuck out. Because I was a fucking horrible math student, horrible science student. Afterwards, dude, I took climatology and meteorology, and it was as a summer class, and it was pretty math intensive, and I got a 99 in the class. Like, it blew my mind. I was like, wait, how in the fuck did this happen? It was like formulas and shit and memorizing stuff and all sorts of like stuff that we did in pre-calc or in geometry was like the only thing I was even marginally good at in high school. Everything else I was miserable at. And my wife was going to be a math major and then became a math PhD, but then she decided to do an applied mathematics PhD. But obviously, like, everything in hers was advanced math and physics. And she's like, yeah, everyone who says that to me, I normally think they probably just had bad math teachers. And in retrospect, yes.
Yes, we my wife had the same. Growing up, you hear girls aren't good at math, and don't waste a whole lot of time on it. And then when she became older, she realized, oh, actually, I am very good at math, and I enjoy math. And she is thankfully pushing that on to our daughter as well. That like math is something that is easy if you apply yourself and if you sit down and you do the actual work. It's like music, you got to practice at it. We have this great curriculum called Beast Academy that is specifically for advanced kids who are advanced in math. And it's a whole, like, it's, we're meeting her halfway because it's like half graphic novels of these like little monsters in school that are learning math and learning new math. And she specifically, like, at times I'll come in and they'll be working on math and I'll say, oh, like I know how to do what you're doing. And Beth will be like, no, you don't actually. You don't know anything that you're doing.
We probably didn't learn, or we learned it the wrong way. Like Cynthia pointed out that a lot of parents complain because they can't figure out how their kids' homework is supposed to be done. But like, the way the kids are learning actually makes, especially when you think about the transition between when you go into math as like the thing you do in middle school or elementary school versus math that's in anywhere comparable to how it's going to be taught in college. This way that they're teaching kids now is way better, in her opinion.
Absolutely. Like when I actually sat down and started looking at how they're doing math, because I hated math when I was growing up too. My father actually would like make me sit down and write out my times tables because I never memorized them. Never, and it was, I'm not going to say that like it was tantamount to abuse, but it certainly felt like it, to have to sit there and physically write out, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, and then do that all the way up to, 10 times 10, doing that every night. And look, it never stuck. But what ended up happening is I learned how to adjust numbers to make them easier inside of my brain. And now I look at math now and they're like, well, what if you just adjusted the numbers to make it sound easier in your brain? Like, well, fuck, if somebody had taught me to do that when I was 10, it would have made a lot more sense and I would have had a better time doing all of this. So I know that a lot of people, like when new math or core math or whatever came out, there was a lot of complaints. And I do, as you said, I do believe that it was mostly parents who were like, you're not carrying the one anymore. Fuck out of here with this math, this woke math where you don't carry anything. So one great thing about homeschooling is I am learning new things myself because they've changed so many things.
Yeah, I mean, man, my parents tried homeschooling for a year when we first moved back from Germany, and let's just say it worked out better for all of us that they gave up. But I'll be honest with you, what you're describing it's funny because that's how it is kind of with music. So I told my story, right? But then I got in the Army and I still had the Rhodes piano at one point. This time I didn't ruin it, but I sold something because I wasn't using it. I actually bought an original Fender Twin Reverb with very, very good tubes in it that had been it's a tube amp basically it uses. I don't really know the physics behind how vacuum tube works in amplification, but it has a kind of warmer sound. I can say that in the very, very basic sense. Anyway, but I bought this amp because I had money in the Army and I was like, well, I'm going to learn piano and play piano, but I never did because I didn't know where to start. And so I just, eventually I got to New York. The Rhodes was in bad condition. The Twin Reverb my friend had held on to it for me, so it was good. I sold all of it. I had a pair of monitor speakers, sold all of it. I had a little MIDI keyboard, sold all of it. And I was just sort of like, I'm just not ever going to do music. So I just was like, yeah, whatever. It's not a thing I'm good at. When I was in a band in high school, I played with a kid who I'm still really good friends with, but he's not a professional songwriter. He's very successful in a different creative field, but he was just a much more advanced songwriter and sort of appreciator of music at a younger age. And he didn't like any of my compositions. And I was like, well, yeah, they all just kind of sucked. And I'm a bad songwriter. Well, truth is they weren't good because I didn't know anything about it. But it was really funny. Once I started doing lessons, because all this started from was really, I don't know if this caused it. I got in a bike wreck in 2019. You remember me recording that recording. I sound really rough.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had this happen to me before, but weird things happened in my brain after the accident. Good and bad. Bad, I never used to be someone who would type the wrong word that has the same pronunciation, like the sort of the false homophone. But I do now. I have to be really careful. It just started happening. I started making more typos. It was weird. I was obviously very slow and very tired for a while after. But also on the positive side, for some reason, stuff that had occurred to me previously, maybe here and there, like a snippet of an idea for music, just seemed a little clearer in my head. And I'm not making this up for dramatic effect. I swear to God, this is how it happened. I was riding my bike home, and oftentimes, because it was about a 30-minute ride each way, I would have kind of ideas because you're paying attention to the road, but you're also lost in your own thoughts. And I was just thinking I'd seen a meme of people being like, you can't tell me Dutch is a real language. And it was that the word for Dutch Major League Baseball is honkbal hoofdklasse, or honkbal hoofdklasse if you pronounce it like an idiot. And for some reason, I was riding my bike home, and I was thinking of like my brother really loved like the really bad synth pop in the 80s stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's terrible. But he listened to anything you can think of. He listened to in that vein. And so I was thinking of the kind of like Aha or Anything Box or I don't know, fucking ABC, Kajagoogoo. These aren't bad bands, but I'm thinking of like Aha is a real good example. Maybe Modern Talking is a good one of like bands that don't speak English as their first language, but they sung in English. And like, especially ABBA really fucking led the way for this. But in the 80s, you'd have these bands from like Germanic countries or Nordic countries or wherever, and they'd sing in English, and the lyrics made no fucking sense at all. And I just had that idea, and I was riding my bike home, and I just started thinking to myself, honk ball hoof de klasse on my radio tonight. And I was like, that's actually really funny. And we'd been doing skits for Trash Future before, but they didn't involve music. And Milo and I had said we got like a real basic entry-level USB plug-in keyboard so we could control, because I had Ableton, the music software, in a basic level, but I only ever used it at work for like generating kind of tones, because we do videos and like training videos or fucking recruitment videos and stuff, and they might be like listing off a thing, and it's like item 1 ding, item 2 ding, especially when it was internal videos for the portal and stuff, when it was like teaching people at the company how to do like a tax thing, like those kinds of little tick mark and a sound thing. So like I used Ableton because you could get the basic license for like $70, which at a corporation with 2,000 employees, that's nothing. And that's all I knew how to use it for. But, I was like, well, I bought this license and it's still installed on this computer and it seems to work. So, because they just reimbursed me for it. So I had the keyboard, and I was like, Milo and I were thinking about it, and he said, this is a really funny idea. And we came up with the idea for the song, but it was like, okay, well, now we have to write it. So we played a little bit with him on a guitar and me with this keyboard. And I just basically was like, all right, well, here's the I don't remember the chords off the top of my head, which is funny because I performed this song. I wrote it and I performed this song live before, but I don't remember the chords. But we figured out what those chords were. I want to say it's like E major, C minor. I can't remember. I think it's B. But anyway, we figured out what key it was in, which off the top of my head, I think it's in A major, but I can't really remember. I'd have to play it again. And so we figured out, okay, well, what? Because I didn't know what to do next. I'm just like, I hadn't written a song in years. I always knew I was bad at songs. I'm not someone who does music, but we had this idea and we liked it. And it was interesting because Milo's approach was like, well, we figured out these chords. So he just Google image searched chords in major keys. And we figured out, okay, well, we're using these and this minor key chord. So this much must be in, I think it's an A major, but real musicians are listening like, wait, you don't fucking know off just from naming those chords, you fucking idiot, you fraud, you charlatan. I just don't remember. But anyway, so we just were like, okay, well, if it's in this key signature, we can use these other chords and that'll sound good. And we just did, and we just used and figured it out, and that's how we came up with the song and we wrote it. And as the story we tell goes, it took us about 25 hours of work to write the song and about 25 minutes to record the skit. And after that, I liked it, and I started playing a little. I was like, this is actually a lot of fun. And I had an idea for a song, and I was trying to compose it on just like, not even with a keyboard, like to play music with, like a fucking, like just the mouse and computer keyboard. And I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do with it. And I asked my neighbor, because he and I had talked about it before, because he's a jazz piano instructor, literally across the street from me. And he does R&B and jazz. And he actually was like, why don't you just like come over and show me what you're talking about? And I explained it, and we talked it through, and it came with like, the song actually wound up being very fun, but not very popular. It's our song about the guy singing, trying to deny that he's friends with Jeffrey Epstein when he has this song called Call Me Mr. E, where he's like, oh, Mr. Epstein, won't you give me a call? Like basically. And so I asked him, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about getting a piano or keyboard or something, and I'm thinking about starting lessons. And he was like, well, what brand are you thinking? And I'm like, I'm thinking I might get like a Kawai, because everyone says that they've got like really, really good key action. And I remember trying to play on the Rhodes, because remember I told you I bought the Rhodes, the vintage piano, and it wasn't a useful piano to practice on because the key action was so heavy that you would be massively overplaying on a regular piano because it didn't have the same tension. And so he's like, well, I happen to have like a Kawai MP6 that I need to get rid of, so I'd sell it to you for like 400 pounds. And I was like, yes, I'll take it. And so I literally carried this big ass piano bag across the street, bought like a cheap piano stand and seat, and I started taking lessons over Zoom with him because this was during COVID. And like, you want to know the truth? Some basic concepts that made no sense to me in music theory do now, because I found a teacher who understands how I learn. And the way that we would do it is I would bring him songs I wanted to play, and he would show me how to play them in the basic way. And then also we talk about ways to improvise, and he'd give me stuff to practice, taught me stuff that's like kind of classic kind of tricks you can do to advance something in composition. But he didn't, other than me trying to, like, I wanted to learn how to play the full actual non-transposed, non-simplified version of Vince Guaraldi's Linus and Lucy. And I did actually do that. Like, I worked through it with him, and that involved reading sheet music, and I had to practice. And a few times here and there, if it was obvious I was struggling, he'd be like, nah, just delete out this note. You can still play it, But other than that, we basically never worked off sheet music. It was always off of like chord bar charts. And more importantly, in music theory, like kind of like what their notation is based on the, what the key signature is. Like in music theory, you'll have a thing where it's like if you're in the simplest example, if you're in the key of C major, then C is the one chord, and you go in a major key, it's major chord as the home at the 1, then 2 and 3 are minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished, and then back to 1. And so that kind of relationship of like play the 1, play the 6, play the 4, that kind of thing. That's kind of a music theory thing, and in a very simplified way. But that just worked. I don't know, dude. It just worked. I'd come to him with like, oh, here's this video of, David Bowie's badass live band playing this song in like the 70s. And we'd find a way to make that into like a jazz piano lesson. That's actually how I learned about a trick you can do to kind of, if you look on the root position, a ninth chord is going to seem pretty fucking challenging, but that's not how people would normally play it. You would play it in a way where you've moved the notes back or forward, like up or down in an octave. And he showed me a trick, and he's like, this is what this piano player is doing in here. Like, for the music heads out there, basically, do the fingering of a 7th chord, but then take your thumb and move it up to the 9, basically, to the 2 or to the 9, and play, and then just move your thumb back down to play the 7. So 9 7 9 7 like that. It was just mind blowing. I was like, and then the weirdest thing about it is, dude, and I know I've been talking forever. You asked me to tell the story, and I'm telling the story.
I know. I asked about like how to start learning how to play the piano, and it's 35 minutes later. But hey, that's what this podcast's for. Go for it.
Well, now I feel bad.
No, absolutely not. Look, I generally come to these things to this show being like, all right, what can I prod Nate to start talking about? Because you got great stories, and you're one of the smartest people I know. So the fact that that you're doing this and I'm learning all kinds of things from it. No, go for it. This is the slop that the hogs want.
I mean, you asked me about learning piano, but then you asked me what my sort of how did I learn about piano and playing music. So.
Absolutely. And you know what? What I am learning is that the best way to learn how to play something is that it has to be something that you're interested in.
Yes.
So you would bring this stuff to a teacher and say, here's something that I like, and I want to learn how to do this thing. And, certainly at our age, neither one of us is going to become a concert pianist or anything, but you can at least learn something and say, hey, this is the direction that I want to go. This is something that I think would be fun. This is, like I said, this is my journey with painting right now, is that I'm getting all kinds of ideas, and I look at them, so we had a sci-fi, classic sci-fi night for the Science Center. My wife and I are vendors. We sell stuff, and I'm starting to make more art. And one of my favorite sci-fi movies from the 1950s was the original 1953 War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the great, the great like green. The spaceships with the little green tips, and it's got the stalk eye on top, and it shoots out everything. And that first scene when they're kind of rising up out of the valley and attacking the soldiers and basically vaporizing everybody nearby. That's like it's a scene that's always stuck out to me. My father was big into sci-fi when I was younger, and had me watch a lot of this stuff. So like that, I wanted to recreate that scene. And basically I just sat down with a pencil and the block of wood that I was going to work on, and I sketched things out, and I just kept looking back and forth to the picture, and then up to what I'm kind of working on. And what I made is passable. I like it, and I showed it to my dad, and he really liked it too. I'll probably give it to him. But I understand. I'm working with acrylics, and I'm working with kind of cheap brushes right now. But one of the plans is I'm going to start watching Bob Ross stuff because there's a guy who's like, here's how to do everything. The idea that anybody can do this if it's something that you're interested in and if it's something that you're willing to put the time into. And that is, that's what I'm hearing from you is at one point in time, because like I said, I never wanted to learn an instrument when I was younger. I had no desire to. And I kind of want to learn piano a little bit, but like just to have some kind of background in it. But if push comes to shove and what time do I have to dedicate to what I'm going to do, it's going to be painting. It's going to be working with my Cricut. For those of you who don't know what a Cricut is, it's a thing that moms buy to label all the things in the house better than a label maker. You can make t-shirts, you can do vinyl cuts and everything like that. I've had one for years and I love doing all kinds of stuff. I made a really interesting, I talked about this when I did the my news update, but you remember, well, did you ever watch the movie Zardoz?
Hilariously, no, but I edited the episode of Kill James Bond where they talked about it, so I know.
You don't need to. It's a terrible fucking movie. But
I feel like you're going to really offend a legion of fans there because they actually loved it. Like, it's got a lot of things that are just incredibly like, you smoked the worst 70s weed ever and thought this was deep. But like, in terms of what it's doing as like an original film, it sounded interesting, but very dated, obviously.
Right. Just because something is interesting and just because something is mold breaking and doing something wildly different doesn't make it a good movie. We can look at Rocky Horror Picture Show for something like that. I understand people love Rocky Horror Picture Show,
right? But it's I'm like, hey man, be careful. You might offend a legion of fans. And you're like, yeah, let me talk about another movie that sucks, Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's like, great.
Look, watch that movie sober at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, without all of the throwing rice and toast and all the other stuff that comes along with it. That makes it a fun experience. Don't get me wrong. I've done Rocky Horror Picture with the whole all the menagerie and shit that you do along with it, and that is a fun experience. But the first time that I watched Rocky Horror was like I rented it, and I was like, oh, it's the afternoon, I'll watch this movie. I was like, this movie is confusing, makes no fucking sense, and I don't understand why people like it. And then I watched it with people doing all the stuff, and I was like, okay, I understand. This is a whole group thing. This movie is bad, and we love how bad it is, and we're having a good time with it.
My brother was a theater kid, so he rented it, of course, and I watched it for the first time in 6th grade, and I was just sort of like, what the fuck is okay? However,
right.
I understand why people like going to the showings, and also I have a funny experience because one time I went to a showing in Korea, and it was like a bunch of expats and their Korean friends. And I met this girl, and she was really nice. It's just like, didn't, nothing connected because like, she was there visiting a friend. She wasn't living there, and I was literally in the army and probably went off to like be in the field for like another month or some shit after. But she and I had a nice moment where we started speaking. She realized I spoke French, and she was like, what is this movie? What is going on? I'm like, now this is a test of your foreign language proficiency, Nate. Explain the plot of the Rocky Horror Picture Show in French. And I tried. I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah. So, but I made a piece, a Zardoz piece, where it's the classic shot of Sean Connery with the gun and the red outfit, the red little mankini that he's wearing.
Yeah.
And it's his hair, his mustache, the mankini, the boots, and the gun, and that's it. Like, it's a whole kind of outline thing, and then it says Zardoz over the top. You can, if you go to the website, you'll see a picture of it because I have it up for sale there. Because the Science Center, somebody came by and was just like, look, you can't sell that particular thing because it's too lewd and sexually explicit. And I was like, first off, I took Sean Connery completely out of this, so if anything, it's less sexy than it used to be. But I like to, I'm getting inspired by those kinds of things, and then I can design these things in on the software and cut them out, and and do all of this. This is my in my 40s. This is kind of what I'm doing is trying to do something a little bit different and learn something new. Like like I said, I've had the Cricut for a while, but I'm learning how to paint. I'm learning. The next one is actually anime. So I've got a lot of anime ideas. It's anime appreciation. So I've got I'm already planning on a One Piece thing, probably some Trigun. I started watching Attack on Titan, so I'm sure that I'm going to get something from that as well. But that's, it's you got to find like what's something that's going to be fun for me to work on, and that like in Kate, because I had also like the day the Earth stood still, the picture of I think Gort the alien. There's the shot where it's just like kind of him. The bust of him, and he shoots the laser that makes your gun disappear, basically. I was working on a painting with that, and it just wasn't coming out, so I kind of tossed it to the side. I'm going to, reskin it and do something else with it. But I do know that, like, if this is something that I want to do, I've got to start taking, putting the time and the effort and the lessons into it. And so, it's a little bit of like, well, where do I find that time to do those things? But also, I have something that is interesting to me, so I am going to put the time and effort into it. Much like, your music journey, you have like these, because I've never been good at drawing. I've never been good at it. And I think it's because I've never had somebody who sat me down and was just like, what do you want to draw? What are the things that you want to do? I can show you how to do those things.
For me, the fact that Trash Future listeners connected so much with the songs and that they became part of kind of like the fake band we invented became part of the lore of the show, that was always incentive to do more. And so, once I had an idea, I'd bring it to Milo and we'd talk it over and we'd come up with something. And sometimes I had almost everything composed. Sometimes I just had a basic idea. Most of the time when you listen to those songs, all the composition is all me. The arrangement is almost entirely me, but the lyrics are almost all him because I haven't really done much. I didn't, like for comedy stuff, he is good at that, and he definitely knows comedy, both musical theater and just stand-up stuff. And so he'd come up with lines that are great, and, I think they make the songs better, but that was an incentive, like, step it up every time, make it a little bit different. Don't do the same song. Don't just use the same instrument voices, add real instruments. We bought a bass guitar. Milo brought in his drum kit. At one point we went to his old childhood home where the drum kit was and recorded drums there. And we only got about 3 takes before like his annoying neighbor started complaining about it. But we did record them and then had to really cut them up like fucking DJ Shadow style because like he just lost time a bunch because he hasn't played drums in forever. But he's a much better drummer than I am. I bought a vintage synthesizer, a Roland Juno 6 that a guy was selling for like a really good price here that had a MIDI thing on, like a MIDI card installed on it. I just got more into it. Milo and I are working on a thing now for a more professional music setup, both to like hopefully get people in as like a paid service to record music here, but then also for our own work. I met a guy through, basically he was a friend of a friend who came to a live show for Trash Future and just talked to me after and was like, this person that we both know. He's like, yeah, I know him too. I went to school with him. And we just, got to be friends. And turns out he's shockingly good at songwriting, like unbelievably good.
That's the upside to music is you can collaborate. You've got a band that means multiple people have inputs and they can kind of do all their thing. Hey, the Beatles let Ringo write music every once in a while, and it was some weird shit. But he had his own.
He wrote what is it? Octopus Garden. He wrote A Little Help from My Friends. He wrote Don't Pass Me By. Not great songs, but they are part of the Beatles oeuvre, if you will.
I love Octopus Garden. That was one of the first Beatles songs that I absolutely loved. That was it was always in heavy rotation on the kids' radio shows when I was younger. And they're playing Weird Al, Dr. Demento, and Octopus Garden.
I think I talked about this on Lions, but it was interesting because I can recall being a very, very little kid, like 3 or 4. And it was right around the time that the Fleetwood Mac album Tango in the Night had come out. And everyone knows that, I think, because Little Lies was such a huge hit single for them. But also here in the UK, for example, Big Love gets played on the radio a ton still and everywhere as well. The thing that's funny about it is I just remembered that in the background as like as a kid, music, Fleetwood Mac, and then I listened to like the famous 70s albums like Rumors and Tusk and stuff. Well, I listened to some of their 80s stuff lately, and it's very funny to me because there's a bunch of bands that I like that are almost all Australian, and I realized like they just ripped off Tango in the Night. Like everything about their sound is just that album. In fact, Cut Copy has a song called "Take Me Over" that was a pretty big hit in Australia, and I think around the world too, or relatively speaking. And it's literally so much lifted from the Fleetwood Mac song "Everywhere." I think they had to co-credit them as songwriters. And it was very funny to me. I'm like, oh wait, I was like, man, what is in the water in Melbourne, Australia? They make such incredible music. It's like apparently they listened to this one Fleetwood Mac album from 1987.
Yeah, and all of Australia was just for like 10 years. Like, let's just do Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, let's just do Fleetwood Mac, yeah. But also with synthesizers and also get like, the guys who produced Daft Punk to produce it. The thing I'll leave you on, okay, actual practical thing. You said you bought this electric piano or keyboard or whatever. There's a connector you're going to want to look for on the back of it, a MIDI connector. The reason or either MIDI or USB. You know what a USB-B connector looks like, yeah. I'm sure. But MIDI, I off the top of my head, it's typically a 5-pin, I think. It's weird. I see them all the time, but in fact, I have one in front of me, but I can't see the pins on it. But basically, I'll take a picture of it for you.
Yeah, I see. I Googled it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So the reason why I bring that up is because it's music instrument digital interface is what I think it stands for. It's an old standard. It's been around since the early 80s, but it's still used today. I actually have a Yamaha DX7 keyboard here, which is like a very early MIDI instrument, and it's very funny because you can download patches and voices for that keyboard off like Web 1.0 websites and like archives of them, and they're like 4 kilobytes for an entire like 32 voice pack that you would load. But the thing that's a challenge is there are no interfaces for like the ancient ass memory cards that thing uses, so you have to hook up to MIDI and send the data over MIDI. The problem is getting your software to slow it down enough that the transfer doesn't fully flood the buffers of this machine and shut it down, because you imagine using a computer in 2024 to send data over the same protocol with a keyboard made in 1983. But the reason I bring up MIDI, though, is there's some really good stuff out there at every kind of level for learning piano if you or if your daughter want to. There's one that can work with MIDI or USB into an iPad. It's called Simply Piano. It's very like gamified, but it's fun. Like my friends use it with their son, and he seems to really enjoy it.
Gamifying is absolutely
then
work in
Simply
house.
Piano is like a subscription thing, but it's an app you could use. And then there's another one called Piano Marvel that I've been using that's explicitly just for sight reading. But in terms of like what it integrates with, I'm stunned at how good it is in terms of practice. And then the other one I'd say is for people out there, if you're listening and you identify perhaps with my story, something that could be a lot of fun to work with. There's a website called Hook Theory, and they do like kind of gamified music theory stuff. And another thing was a subscription service. And they have like, if you subscribe, not only do you have access to like all the sort of resources for the gamified thing to like learn and get better at it, but they have like books, like books in very succinct ways that they've sort of formatted concept by concept to learn a lot of like these basics, what I'm talking about. They also have a thing called HookPad, which is actually really genuinely incredible, because HookPad is a web app composition software based on what I'm describing before, where you pick the key, you pick the mode, it tells you what your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chords are. You can borrow from other modes. You can't really completely, I mean, I guess you can if you want to just search for a chord and completely break the rules. But if you click on the chord, you can change it if you want it to be like, full, was it 3 beats, 2 beats, 1 beat, quarter note, eighth note. You can just pick the chord based on your key. Like, okay, you want the 1, then you want the 4, then you want the 5. It'll tell you what those are going to be. So in C major, it'd be C, F and G, excuse me. C, F and G, that kind of thing. But then you can be like, do you want it to be a 7th or a 9th or 11th, 13th, diminished 5th, diminished 7th, all kinds of things you can do with it. And I use it. It took me a while for the learning curve, because it's not as intuitive as using like an actual digital audio workstation like Ableton, which is what I primarily use for composition. But once I figured it out, I've been knocking out compositions because it just makes the process so much easier. And it's a really cool way to practice that concept. So listing them back off again for kids, for people just kind of like gamify it, to learn how to play songs on the piano and to read music on the piano. Simply Piano is the app. To learn, if you want to, you have a piano and you have MIDI capability and you want to learn how to sight read better in a way that I think is extremely good to kind of like lesson by lesson, like step by step, get you to a much better level, Piano Marvel. And if you want to learn about music theory and have access to this thing I'm describing that lets you kind of like compose without having to know how to write sheet music or to like program in the individual notes the way you would in Logic or Ableton or GarageBand or God help you Pro Tools, it's called HookPad is the composition thing, but Hook Theory is the main website.
HookPad, yeah, like I can see just looking at the website how easy this makes, and really just easily it makes, playing around with the idea. Like you can throw stuff in and it's like, I don't like it, I can change it really easily, and then it gives you, here's the sheet music for it.
It's also amazing too, because I mean, the suggestions aren't necessarily great, but something that I found that's really interesting is that like there are songs that I like, and so sometimes I'll recreate a composition of those songs in there, and if I might have to search to find the chord because I'm borrowing from a different mode, or like I didn't really understand the concept of a what you call like a fifth of fifth chord, but I do now because I actually wound up I'd used one in a song and it worked, but I didn't know why, and I thought it was a key change. Turned out it wasn't. It was that in the key that I was in, playing this and then playing this next chord was like if you went to the tonic, the fifth chord in your what's it called, the five in your home key, and then if you reoriented so that the five was now the one of the new key and went to the five of that would be that chord, and harmonically it just makes sense. This sounds like gibberish, but genuinely I wouldn't have understood this a year ago, but I did. I'm like, oh, now I get it, and it's because of this software or this app. Like genuinely, like another thing that's amazing about it too is that if you do compose something and you like it, and you can have it kind of program in very basic sound, like kind of keyboard demo sounding like accompaniment, you can export every single one of those as individual MIDI tracks. So you can dump all of that stuff into an actual composition software, load it up, and refine it. And I've actually been doing that with some things, like to get a basic demo together, do it in there, and most likely change up the drums a bit. But most of the other stuff I just keep and drop different voices in for different instruments, and then send it to someone that I want, like my songwriting partner, just be like, hey, what do you think of this? It's incredible. So I've talked a ton. That's my musical journey. I'm somehow a guy playing music seriously for the first time in his life at almost 40, but I like it. I enjoy it. I always have. And it was something I always wished I could do. And I just assumed I had zero ability for it and you had to be born with ability. And that's not, in fact, the case. I just like it enough to practice.
Let me tell you, all of you out there who are staring down the barrel of your 40s sooner or later, and you're thinking, what's my midlife crisis going to be? You can get around all of that by just being like, fuck it, what do I want to do now? And deciding that you're going to learn something new. You're getting into music, I'm getting into art, and not feeling like you have to be great at it, just as long as you're having fun and enjoying yourself and producing something with, hanging out with your buds and enjoying yourself. That's what like every dad cover band that's out there that, goes and plays bars on a Saturday night and plays, stuff from the 80s and 90s. They're all just drinking buddies with the music problem.
Just hanging out and playing like fucking Your Love Is Like Bad Medicine, something like that.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so let's do our Ask a Dad. This one is, who is the best dad role model you've seen on TV?
Bandit and Bluey.
So have you started watching Bluey then?
Yes, we watch it just so she gets familiar with it, and yes, Bandit.
Yeah, that's really the only answer. Like for modern stuff is a guy who, and like I read something about how like Bandit can make people feel like they're bad fathers because they don't go above and beyond like Bandit does. But here's the thing, Bandit only has to be a dad like that for like 6 minutes. So like if you can do that for 6 minutes for a 6-minute episode where you get really into whatever crazy thing that your kids are doing, that will probably help you keep your sanity. You don't have to do it for a half hour.
Yeah, and I think like obviously I'm not at the point where you're kind of like, if my daughter gets disappointed, then it's more because of baby things. It's not like it's not quite at the emotional heft of when your 6-year-old is disappointed. But I think that it's very easy to think you're the worst parent in the world no matter what happens. And the biggest thing is just that, the essentials always have to be covered. And then other than that, like, you're going to make mistakes because everyone does. The biggest thing is the biggest thing I think what I've learned so far in yesterday was 5 months. It's just been that like, if you make a mistake, you're not doing yourself any favors, wasting more and more time agonizing about it. But you can think of a way to what can you create as like a buffer or stopgap, backstop, so that you don't make the same mistake again.
Yeah.
That's really it.
I think the first Bluey episode that we ever caught was the fairies episode, where it starts out where Bandit kind of snaps at Bingo because he's working, he's on the phone, and she's pestering him and everything. And at the end of it, you know, the biggest resolution is him saying, "Hey, I'm sorry that I did that. I'm sorry that you felt that way. Just understand I love you." And you know, we've talked about that in the past about how like revolutionary it is to be like,
wow,
oh,
you can apologize to your kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you want your kid to apologize to you for shit. Feel free to do the same thing. So yeah, I think it's the easy answer, but really it's the only answer currently. You know, thank God we have Bandit now, because otherwise we'd have to, I don't know, come up with like Bob Belcher from Bob's Burgers, and that's not. But I feel, I don't know if you've ever watched Bob's Burgers with Tenny.
No.
When you were talking, it's fine. I was going to bring it up because when we were talking about plugging the MIDI in and having different sounds, Gene, the son, has a keyboard that he's always like programming fart sounds into, and that he'll walk around playing like different sounds to the keyboard. He's a music maker himself, but to like he just has like kind of that same like, oh, just let's throw some weird sounds in, and I hit it, and there's a dog barking, and then I can make some music to this. They call
this the Depeche Mode in the early 80s method. Just sample everything, even if it's just like a bottle cap hitting the floor, or, you know, a piece of pipe hitting another piece of pipe, so on and so forth. I think the biggest thing is just that, like, unrealistic expectations, but also like you don't want to give yourself a license to just be a inattentive or bad parent either. I think the biggest thing is more just like there are so many ways out there to make yourself feel like a bad parent, and so much parenting stuff online seems as though it's designed to make you feel like you're never doing enough. And much like the representations of so many other things on TV, that is not representative of reality. You are not a bad person because it took you a minute to get to something when it wasn't an emergency. You know what I mean? Like, if
you're not a bad parent if you're tired, man. Sometimes you're tired, and your kids is like, you know, kids, 7-8-year-olds have like boundless energy, and they want to, you know, get up and do this and play with me and do these things. Like sometimes my daughter will come to me like, oh, do you want to play this board game? I'm like, I fucking hate that board game. No. But I will play a different one with you if you want to play this other thing. She's been really trying to like play Monopoly with me, and we had like we've had Monopoly Junior, which is like you can play Monopoly Junior and blow through a game in like 20-30 minutes or so. But like actual Monopoly with only 2 people, you're never going to finish a game. And I always try to explain that to her. It's like, no, I will play. I would rather teach her how to play Risk than play Monopoly.
Playing regular Monopoly with 2 people is like the olden days where they like play a game of chess by telegram. Like, it's just fuck no, hell no.
Yeah, you're gonna lose interest way before you get to the end of it. But Nate, I appreciate you going through your musical journey. It makes me feel better about the journey that I'm going on with, you know, doing art, learning how to draw, finding all these things. And like I said, it's to ward off the whole my midlife crisis. What have I done with my life? You know, I feel like you and I never have that problem because we've done so much in the last 20 years that the next 20 years is just like, all right, what's next? And I feel like that's what is going to keep, for all of you out there listening, that's what's going to keep you sane in your middle ages.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Like I said, I think back on it, and it's like what I'm doing now is so unrecognizable from anything that I was doing or thought I would be doing 20 years ago. That like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's that variety and that the possibility out there that maybe something comes along that, you know, that piques your interest and you are good at it, you know, or it's a thing you want to learn, like being able to learn stuff. I don't know. I feel 40 when I see kids walking down the street dressed like fucking, like they made their clothes out of parachutes, but like, I don't feel old.
Do you? Because our generation did that too.
I know, but it's weird. It's different than the way we did it. If we dressed up, if the clothes still fit and we dressed up in like the fucking, you know, like the baggy Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren polo stuff, you know, and we had enough of hair left on our heads to fucking grow it out and side part it or center part it, you know, all that, the Calvin Klein shit. If we did that and we did it the way we did it in the late 90s, it would look very different than how this stuff is now. Aesthetically, there's things that are similar. There's style choices and but in terms of the actual look, the way they do it, and it's not bad looking. It's just funny because for so long that was like, oh no, that's passe. That's shit that people did in the 90s. They make fun of that in movies about like making fun of the Backstreet Boys and shit. So it's just very weird to see it come back. My friends were in town. Their kids are now teenagers. Their son was wearing Paco Rabanne stuff and baggy as hell. And I was just like, bro, I'm not even trying to make fun of you. He was 16 or 15. And I'm like, but you genuinely could be one of my classmates in 8th grade. The way that you dress, it's crazy to me. That's how it is, man. You live long enough, you see the baggy jeans in the center parts, the butt cuts come back, man. You live long enough, fucking next thing you know, the kids will be like, oh, it's this new thing. We dress up like Color Me Bad or something. It's going to happen.
They start putting their pants on backwards like crisscross, or the I mean, what are Jinko jeans but like bell bottoms where it just went higher up the leg?
Well, yeah, Jinko jeans were bell bottoms with a storage compartment for a 2-liter of Mountain Dew. All right, that's what they were designed for. Y'all want to hate on them, but you know what? You never went without your Mountain Dew back in those days.
Exactly.
And you paid $100 for a pair of pants that was like 5 times more cloth than you needed. It's just the way that it went. And that was a lot of money. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but it was a fuckload of money in 1998.
Yeah. Well, Nate, thank you, everybody, thank you for listening. You can get so much more content, not just on our free feed, but on the Patreon at patreon.com/hellofaWayToDie. 7 years and going strong of content going back. We've got just released a Mashcast with Carrie, and we're going to have the $5 and up people were voted on a movie for us to watch on the Zoo Crew, and that's going to be Battle Los Angeles, because I love the Army fighting aliens in every permutation that we can do it in. So that will be coming out next week. You can get all of that $5 a month on Patreon. And however you can support us, whether it be financially, whether it be giving us stellar reviews or telling your friends, hey, here's this podcast with a couple of middle-aged dudes talking about being middle-aged, we appreciate it. So thank you all. Thank you, Nate, and everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.